Hey, Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
I don't know if I can hear you, though.
No? Anyone else hear me? Oh,
Yeah, I can hear you.
okay. Does that work, Brad? Is that better?
Okay. Yeah, I had to use my earbuds.
Okay.
Council, we'll call the meeting to order. For the record, it is March 16, 2020 at 4:31 p.m. We will begin this afternoon's work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Borton,
Here.
Councilman Cavanagh, Councilwoman Perot,
Here.
Councilwoman Strader,
Here.
Councilman Hoagland,
Here.
Councilman Byrne, Mayor Simison.
Here. Next item is adoption of the agenda. Councilman Byrne.
Sorry, I apologize, Dino. Appreciate that reminder. Tonight, we're going to have to amend the agenda to include item 19, which is an additional Idaho code 74-2061C and possibly D. So with that, I would move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amended agenda is adopted. Next up is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Byrne.
I move that we approve the consent agenda for the mayor to sign and for the clerk to attest.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda is agreed to. There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so next item up is a proclamation for the Mountain View High School Girls Basketball State Championships Day. Go ahead and go down to the podium and ask the team to join me at the podium. So my first question is, how many of you were here last year? None. Oh, not here, but on the team from last year. Okay. Okay, well, we're excited to have you here officially from that standpoint, but congratulations on the back-to-back and being a proud South Side representative. I got a daughter who's a freshman at Mountain View, so she was pretty stoked for you all. Does he really, though? No. Oh, okay. Just kidding. Do we have someone else to come? Okay. We'll wait for just 1 second from that standpoint. Just while we wait, there are going to be two proclamations. I'm going to read one proclamation, and then there'll be a second proclamation, which will be entered into the record, which will have your names. So if you ever want to come back when you're older and look up in the city record books here, you can see your names in the record, but we're not going to ask me to butcher all your names here today from that standpoint. But after I read the proclamation, we'd love for you to at least come up, state your name, so it's on the record, position you played, your year, and then we'll do a quick photo if that works for your all schedule today. So. Still waiting. We'll go ahead and do it, and maybe by the time they get here, they can come up and join and be here for the picture. I'll try to read slowly. I'm told that I need to do better at my enunciation. So whereas being a Mountain View basketball player is more than scoring points, making assists, grabbing rebounds, stealing the ball, and achieving back-to-back state titles. It is training to build leadership, character, confidence, teamwork, and resilience, all traits needed to succeed on the court, in the classroom, and in the real world. And whereas coming from behind in both the opening round of the state tournament and in the district championship is why you should never count out a defending state championship team. And whereas their hard work and teamwork resulted in a 62-55 victory over Thunder Ridge High School in the 2021 state basketball championship tournament. And whereas the Mountain View Lady Mavericks captured a third state title and the second straight 5A girls basketball state championship trophy to bring it home to the Treasure Valley. And whereas the leadership, training, and discipline of their coaches helped all the team members to focus their talents and passion to become a winning team, with each player making valuable contributions to their victory. Therefore, I, Mayor Robert E. Simpson, hereby proclaim March 16, 2020 as Mountain View High School Girls Basketball State Championships Day in the city of Meridian, and call upon the community to join me in congratulating the Lady Mavs on their remarkable athletic achievement and for representing Meridian so proudly in the state tournament. Congratulations. Coach, if you'd like to say a few words, and then we'll have them all come by and state their name and that's okay.
I just want to say that it was definitely a privilege to coach these young ladies this year. And for some of them that we went back to back, that was pretty amazing. That doesn't happen very often. First of all, just winning one state championship, but to go back to back was pretty special. I know that our rings all have back to back on them. So, and everyone wanted to get a ring. So that's something they'll remember the rest of their lives. So there's a great group of gals. And I'll tell you that they worked hard and they really deserve their state championship. So thank you, girls. Nice job. And way to work hard, because hard work does pay off. Nice job, girls. Thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate this recognition for bringing us in here, because it's always, it's pretty neat to be recognized by the city, because normally it's just being recognized by our schools. So to be recognized by the city and West Ada School District is pretty special. Thank you.
I'm Natalie Euler. I play a guard slash a post, kind of everywhere. And I'm a junior this year.
I'm Demi Thompson. I'm a guard and I'm a freshman.
I'm Taylor Hester. I play guard and I'm a senior.
My name is Millie Bruner. I am a forward and I am a senior as well.
My name's Taylor Crossolt. I'm a guard and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Marley Hamilton. I play a post and I'm a junior this year.
I'm Emma Olson. I play post and I'm a senior this year.
I'm Nia Williams. I play a guard and I'm a senior this year.
I'm Michaela Thornton. I'm a senior and I play a post.
These are just City Meridian pins. I'll let you pass these out to your team afterwards. From that standpoint, if we can do a quick picture, and just for the record, Garrett White back there, he's got 2 young daughters, twins. You want to get on his radar for his girls. I think he might live in the Meridian High School boundary currently. I don't remember, but we can adjust boundaries. Okay.
ladies. Very cool.
Nice work.
Well done. Hey, I was just joking about the Rocky Mountain joke earlier too, guys. I was just kidding about that. Come on.
That's awesome. All right, council, moving on. Item 11 is our Meridian Fire Department of approval of AIA G802 amendment to AIA B133 agreement for schematic design, northwest and south fire stations and PD substations with a not to exceed amount of $254,715. I'm gonna turn this over to, I've got Stacy, I've got Deputy Chief, or is this gonna be Chief Bloom? Who's gonna be speaking on this item? Chief Bloom, if you want to come forward. Oh, they weren't here. I didn't have my screen. I couldn't see anybody else.
Chief Bloom was going to be the lead on this. Is he on the call?
Yeah, just Stacy, he is. He's here in the audience, so.
Perfect.
Chief
Thank
Bloom,
you.
We'll turn it over to you for a few minutes.
Okay, so it's my understanding that there was some questions or some concerns about this in the consent agenda. This budgeted $254,715 was approved for FY21 budget. It was specifically for the design schematics to Rice, Ferguson, Miller, and Pivot North. That has been accomplished. The money has been expended. It has not exceeded the budget allowance of $254,715. And additionally, it doesn't have any implied.
Mr. Mayor, sir,
Councilman
interrupt real quick too. Could you get closer to the mic? It's a little
I'm
tricky to
sorry.
hear.
I am sorry. Okay.
There we go.
Rookie
Thank you.
mistake. So again, maybe should I start over there, sir? Okay, I'm sorry. I will start over. So the concern over the consent item of the architectural schematic design was a budgeted item for FY21. It was specifically and only used for schematic design in the first phase with the Rice, Fergus, Miller, and the Pivot North architecture contract. The amount of $254,715 was what was budgeted. It has been what has been expended. It has not exceeded that dollar amount. Additionally, it doesn't imply or require any additional budget expense. That was a single purchase at one time and no contractual agreement to do anything else. And Stacy, if I have captured that correctly, please feel free to chime in if I'm off on anything.
That is correct. The schematic design was in the budget already. So that was one of the phases that for design that has been budgeted.
Oh, this is Keith. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Keith.
All right, just wanted to clarify that those funds haven't been expended yet. We're asking for that contract to go forward for that dollar figure. This doesn't take us into construction drawings. This simply gets us the schematic, and the main focus, I believe, of this is to get through schematic design and allow the CM and the architect to put a reasonable construction estimate together that we can bring back to council for council's consideration and direction, whether or not to move forward with 1, 2, 3, or 4 facilities. Stacy, did that capture it all?
Thank you, Keith. And just to reiterate, this does not go any further than what council authorized during this last year's budget conversation.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Council, any questions? Okay, if not, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
I move that we go ahead and I guess we've approved it, so move forward with the Approval of AIA G802 amendment to AIA B133 agreement for schematic design as described further in item 11.
Mr. Mayor, I
Second.
second that.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the item is agreed to. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
Stacy
council.
and Keith.
See you,
And
bud.
next up is our Parks and Recreation Department, the discussion regarding Discovery Park Phase 2 amenities and timing. Turn this over to Mr. Barton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, or Madam Mayor, sorry. You know, it's good to be here in person. I haven't been here for quite a while, and it's definitely good to be here. Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to be here in person and talk to you about Discovery Park Phase 2. So what we want to talk about this afternoon, just to kind of refresh everybody's memory of Discovery Park and what we've done in Phase 1, the size of the park that we currently have off of Lake Hazel, some of the amenities, the design, construction timing, and then just the budget. And then one thing that we're pretty proud of, and as a department and also as a city, is that we received an award from the Idaho Parks and Recreation Association for an outstanding facility, which was pretty cool. So Discovery Park Phase 1 on the south side of Lake Hazel Road between Locust Grove and Eagle Road is approximately 27 acres. The first part of Discovery Park, we did a lot of infrastructure improvements. We added a couple of softball fields, 3 picnic shelters. You know, we wanted the heart of the park to be a destination playground with some really unique amenities. We were able to bring those and put those in place. There's a sand and water play, which is incredibly unique. And it's really cool in the summer when you go out there early in the morning, the wagons are showing up with kids and bulldozers and sand buckets. And then you see them heading home and they're crying and they're exhausted, and it's really awesome. You know, signature destination playground with a climbing rock of the state of Idaho, playground, concession stand, restroom facility. So really with this, you know, we were able to kind of set some of the groundwork for what's to come in future phases. So it was a 3-year process. You know, the first part of that process is public outreach. We did quite a bit of public outreach, both in, you know, starting really in 2015, and then we carried that forward with more specific conversations with the community as to what's desired, what amenities, you know, and then from there we finished the design, we permitted, bidding and construction. We always like to bid our projects in the winter time. We feel that we gain some advantages that way when people can get things scheduled for the following year. They put a sharper pencil to it maybe during the slower time. We go through construction, and then obviously with any park project, there's always a grow-in period, which it's not done, and you know, you kind of dust everything off and then the people come in. So it's kind of got to sit there for a little while. So it's really a 3-year process. I'm proud to say that we had a beginning budget of a little over 8.2 million, and we brought the project in at 8.1 million, a little over. So the execution rate on that was pretty good. For a project that size, we don't want to over budget. Obviously, we don't want to under budget. So we were able to hit that mark pretty well. And then, of course, the outstanding Park or Facility Award that we got was pretty cool. So on to Phase 2. The upper part of your screen shows Phase 1, and it's kind of in the backdrop there. So Phase 2 is a continuation of of some of that during our public outreach and some of the early master planning that we did on the park. It's always been envisioned and desired by the community to have a destination softball complex. Obviously, we need to add more parking to that, but really what we wanted to do is take it to the next step, and where we have, we want amenities to serve at all ages, all abilities. There are certain ages that in parks are generally underserved, and one of those specific ages, we do a really good job with little kids. We do a good job with adults and families that want passive activities. But it seems like one of the left out groups is always the teens and tweens, the preteen folks. So we wanted to put an area in specifically that can accommodate some of those uses. So what I've done is I have plans that are kind of blow-ups of each one of these specific areas, and I can run through that. And if anybody has any questions, please stop me. We want to hear your feedback. We want to see if we're on the right track. If something pops into your mind, please stop me. So here's the areas. We have an active area with pickleball courts, bocce ball courts, basketball courts, a pump track. There's been a lot of community people that have reached out to us, that have a strong desire for some bicycle facilities in South Meridian. There's the Eagle Bike Park, and then there's some facilities in Boise, so there's a real gap there for Meridian. We have the teen area, and then we also have the multi, we're calling them multi-use diamonds, because what we've done is we've overlaid rectangular fields across these baseball fields and softball fields, because we want these fields to cater to a variety of different uses. We want them to cater to and be available to a variety of different ages, whether it's little league, adult softball, girls fast pitch softball, soccer, lacrosse, football. And of course, those fields would be lit like the fields that currently exist on site are. So here's an enlargement of the active area that shows the layout and its relationship to the existing restroom facility. Existing playground is kind of on the top of the screen. There's bocce ball courts, there's 6 pickleball courts, a couple of picnic shelters for shade and just a gathering spot, basketball courts, the pump track, which again kind of checks that box and hits that mark that's highly desired right now. We've also penciled in an area for a community garden. The community garden in Kleiner Park has been such a huge success, and they do take a limited number of families. That just the social aspect of that and the sense of community that comes with those community garden type facilities is awesome. So we want to try to get another one of those in place. The multi-use area, the multi-use diamonds. There's another restroom facility planned here, restroom concessions, a center area with possibly a small tot lot for kids. And then you can see how those rectangles are overlaid over the top of those, and the side fences would be on rollers. So as you go from one use to the next, you could take that fence and kind of roll it out of the way. And then even with some of the lighting that exists right now, that there's different settings that you can turn one field on and play softball on it. You can turn all 3 on. You can turn on lights, and they would illuminate only a football field or a soccer field or both, so you can switch between uses. We want these facilities to be to be in use as much as we possibly can. When you build something like this, you want to cater to as many different age groups, a variety of users. And we think a facility like this does a pretty good job accomplishing that. So the teen area. This is one of those things that teens are hard, they're a hard demographic to reach in a park. And what we've done with this design is we've incorporated a couple of sand volleyball pits in. There's a small gathering point in the center of that in the form of a covered picnic shelter. We would bring Wi-Fi into the park. A couple of just half-court basketball courts with adjustable hoops. You could have a slam dunk contest or just shoot around. One of the other really cool features is that there's these skate elements that you can put on concrete, and it's not a full skate park, but it's what's called a skate spot. So you can ride on these with a skateboard or a scooter or even a bike. And this area is behind one of the existing softball fields that's already in place. It's kind of near the road, so we incorporated some of the aspects of design that the teens, we want the area to be visible, but we want an area that they feel that they can call their own, and that that they could hang out, they can socialize. Maybe there's some activities to do. This is one of the things that we had a public meeting at not Stoddard Middle School, but I'm drawing a blank. Middle school, yes, Victory Middle School, not, and then also with MIAC. And through that outreach, these are some of the ideas that we were able to put together that, we had some prompts, but the kids really filled in the blanks. And this is a unique area because there isn't, like I said, parks we have a lot of playgrounds, we have athletic fields. And if that's not your thing, what do you do in our parks? So we think that, this kind of fills that void. So moving on, are there any questions?
Mike, I got a couple, just two in these two areas. One, pump track. I'm not fully familiar with the concept. I guess my main question is both here in the skate area and in the pump track. Why not go with the full-on totally part 2 out here as compared to a smaller element? And the same from a pump track element, why not more of I'll say BMX course in a larger space? It just seems, the pump track seems small to me. Not saying this is the final design, this is conceptual, but those would be my two things. I feel like those are two things that could be bigger in this park, both elements. But so,
Mr. Mayor, and I'll comment. I think Luke, Councilman Kavanagh, was that kind of?
Mr. Mayor, I think that was one of my questions, is to help me articulate the size of them, because to the mayor's point, they both look small, and not that we're at this point about preference or feedback yet. This is still more questions, but to help me understand how we're articulating the size in comparison to maybe some other features that are out there, or how they comparison into the amount of ball field space.
Yeah, and that's great. So Mr. Mayor and Councilman Kavanagh, what we were thinking is that the pump track is an area that families can take, and as a dad, you could ride your bike with younger kids, and that the pump track, doesn't take up a lot of space necessarily. Like a BMX track needs elevation change, which is difficult because we have a flat site. So the pump track is something that you get into, and your gravity just kind of takes you through and you don't have to pedal that often. It's also something that you can use as, you can take a scooter in there and use. But it is, and I get your point that it's kind of in between it's not a full-blown BMX park, but and then this skate spot is not a skateboard park. So these are exactly, the comments that we need to move forward. So, a lot of this, what we can do is we can take your comments and feedback, and as we move forward, I think tonight we want to kind of gauge, are we on the right track generally? And as we move forward in design, then we would love to come back and update you and say, okay, we took your feedback and here are some of the changes that we've incorporated into this. Is this more a better vision maybe for this site?
And just a very simple, is the pump track dirt or another surface?
Mr. Mayor, it's asphalt.
Okay.
Has an asphalt top to it.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Strader.
So this is listed in the CFP at something like around $11 million, and the last phase was 8 million. Help me understand why this is so much more expensive than phase one. I'm assuming most of the infrastructure is in and we own the land, but help give me a feel for comparing the cost to the phase one, please.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So a lot of the infrastructure infrastructure was put into phase one for sure. So our impact fee study has our cost per acre of building new parks at $241,000 per acre. And those numbers are taken from Keith Bird Park, Hillsdale, and Rita Husky Park. Those parks were done with partnerships. So we have, as a community and as a city, we have built, and I believe currently are still planning for, high amenity value parks that are, they're not just grass and toilets. So 241,000 is our current estimate. If we did the total of phase two is 38 acres, that puts us at about 9.1 million. The other thing that is a little bit unique to this that we usually don't do with parks is that there is a collector road on the east side of the park that's going to be the main entrance to the park that the city needs to construct, at least from the park entrance to the public safety facility property on the corner. So if we back up a little bit, so we're right about where where the row of trees is on the plan, we're responsible for that portion of that collector road. So as far as budget, I mean, if we just take our current cost per acre at 241,000 and do the math, and we're at 9 million, plus we need to build a road. But as we move forward, we want to make sure that we have the right set of amenities, some of the right value. Do we have too many? Do we don't have enough? I mean, we're here to kind of see that if this schematic design is something that's kind of close, and then we can go revise it and move forward.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Strader.
So I guess just to help me sort of understand the vision. So this would be a regional park. It's going to be huge. It's going to serve all these different age groups. Would the idea then be that we would not expect further neighborhood parks in South Meridian in kind of the long-term plan? So this will serve as sort of the giant park that serves everybody in this region of Meridian?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Strader. And actually, yes. I mean, the short story is yes. We have another park in our CFP that is Brundage Gray Cliff, that's 9 acres, and it's over off of Meridian Road. And it's north of Amity. So right now, there aren't any other parks planned for South Meridian.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Pearl.
Thank you, Mike. Questions about the multi-use diamonds. Where is there a place that like there's going to be some seating, some stands for viewers around there? And also, if you could go back up a slide, go back a slide. The community garden, is that something that is maintained by a volunteer group, or is that something that the staff, I guess my concern is that maybe we get a volunteer group that's not very organized, and now all of a sudden the staff is out there, cleaning up dead, dead plants and whatnot. So could you kind of run through with me maybe how that's working at Kleiner, and what some more specifics on that, and whether that space is really something that is going to be a benefit to the community or a cost to our taxpayers?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Perot, great questions. Let me go forward and take the first one first. With the softball area or the multi-use area, the circle that's in the center where the trees are, we see that as being a raised berm. So there's seating opportunities on that berm, and then also shaded seating. Other than that, we would place bleachers in there like we do around our other fields. So there isn't any terracing necessarily, but there is that berm area in the center.
Okay.
And
And so one more question on that. How would that work with, if that's a raised area, how would that work with somebody who is disabled?
It would be a sloped grass area, and it wouldn't be accessible with a wheelchair. I mean, you could back up to the edge, but that's a really good point. I mean, there should be probably a nook or something that you could back in with a wheelchair, similar to some raised amphitheater seating, or even bleachers have. So yeah, love it. Good suggestion. Thank you. And the community garden. So we have someone, Julie Bokenkamp, that runs the community garden at Kleiner. If we could find another person like her, we would be, good
luck.
Yeah, I don't know.
She's one of a kind.
So they're called unicorns.
Unicorn, exactly.
Yeah, she's just phenomenal. In fact, maybe more of a concern that we have is that how are we going to replace her at Kleiner? If we get, and we've had conversations, and we keep saying, Julie, you gotta find somebody for Discovery Park. But I think the problem is that it's been, prior to the pending development that's going to hit that area, it's kind of far out there. So nobody's really been engaged enough to want to take it over. We wouldn't plant it until we had somebody that could run it. We don't want to do individual plots in a garden and manage 30 adult personalities. It just, we want a community garden with a, that has bylaws, and everybody has buy-in, and if one person drops out, the whole thing doesn't fold. That's kind of our model for doing it. I think it works really well at Kleiner. We just need a spot here, but we wouldn't put it in until we had the person.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Pro.
I guess I just think of community gardens as more of like a neighborhood park type of amenity and not so much like a big regional park amenity. I would like to see some sort of, if it could work in the city budget, some sort of rose garden or area where there's some beautiful, some flowers and somewhere there's benches, and kind of like what we have in Julia Davis, where we have a rose garden, maybe not to that capacity, but something more like that, that's just really visually appealing. Maybe rather than a vegetable garden type of concept.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Burnt.
Kavanagh. I would highly recommend that Councilwoman Perot, set up an appointment and with Julie and someone from the Parks Department, and to get a better understanding of what goes out there at Kleiner Park. I totally get with what she's saying, but it's nothing short of amazing what goes on out there at Kleiner Park. And I totally get it. Like, you look at, community gardens, there's one downtown Boise that comes to mind. I don't remember the cross streets, but it isn't real appealing to the eye. And so, but I get why one would have that concern about how it would look, but Julie has done a phenomenal job. I don't think, she's one of a kind. I don't know how you're going to get two of her. If you do, congratulations. But
We're recruiting all the time.
I know. And there was someone before Julie, I forgot her name. I was on the Parks Commission. Katie. Yeah, that's right. And she did an amazing job too. When I was knocking doors in my campaign 4 years ago, there was a fair amount of folks who were still fairly engaged in that, and was wanting it to be expanded. And so I would, maybe what we can do is have Julie come and even maybe do a presentation during a workshop or something like that, or something, because it's really amazing what she does.
Mr. Mayor, to that point, they do incorporate a lot of flowers. They do a lot of what they do in the community garden is both food crops and flower crops, and they cut flowers and they take them to nursing homes.
Yes.
And they do this amazing stuff. And just recently, the last couple of years, they've put in a pollinator garden that's
bees
and fully in bloom. And it's aesthetically, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
that kind of gets to, at least I've got a few questions for you, is what communication we've had with the Co-op Gardener Group about this facility? Because to me, I think that's a linchpin, is if they're supportive of doing something out here, I'm all in. If they're not supportive, then I kind of lean towards my other council members, say, let's look at a plan B for that space. So I'm not expecting to have that answer tonight, but I know that's probably a plan of yours to eventually do that. But to me, that's an important component, is I would want their endorsement, buy-in, and a plan for how they're going to make that one replicate the success that we've seen at Kleiner, and hopefully in more of our parks to come. So, Mr. Mayor, Mike, sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I don't know if you have more of your presentation or if you're looking for more feedback.
Well, I've got a couple more slides, and I have one slide in particular too that I'd like to talk about, and it has to do with the transportation aspects of South Meridian. And I'm not going to go over the list, but I put together a list of all the road projects and all the pedestrian connectivity and all the planned improvements that are really in the next 3 years for South Meridian. And, we put this project on hold for good reason, because the area was just not ready for additional traffic and expansion. And now that we have this number of projects coming to the area, we feel that we're ready. One in particular is that we've been able to negotiate a cooperative development agreement between Brighton and ACHD to widen Lake Hazel Road from Locust Grove all the way to Eagle Road. ACHD is offered to purchase the right of way ACHD is offered to reimburse Brighton for 100% of the construction costs of the project. The only thing that ACHD is asked that is that the city would pay the 3% administration fee on the project, which is $90,000. So we have updated our consolidated financial plan, and during the budget process, we will bring that conversation forward. That's for another time. But just for a little bit of perspective and a little context, with this park, the public safety facility on the corner of the new collector and Lake Hazel Road and the park, we would have to share the cost of a signalized intersection at that intersection. ACHD is offering to put that signal in for us through this agreement. So it's a win for everyone in the city, everyone in South Meridian, for connectivity with sidewalks and just traffic. But as you can see, that there is a very extensive list of projects that are planned in the next 3 years. So we feel that the timing is really right to get busy and get working on the design and budgeting. And so, I mean, our proposed timeline would be to finish phase 2 design. And of course, we wouldn't just go away and finish. We would come back with regular updates. Do the design and permitting in 2021, position ourselves so we could bid next winter, early fall, start construction a year from now, construct in 2022 and early 23, and open in the summer of 23. So that would be our preferred. Actually, that would be open in the summer of 24.
Mr. Mayor,
A 3-year process.
1 second, Council. Mike, just for the record, what percentage of this project is impact fee?
Mr. Mayor, great question. So 100% of this project will be impact fees from our impact fee account. It's all impact fee eligible. Right now, our impact fee balance is 15.2 million.
Just want to, again, make sure that was clear to everybody that this is what the funds are designed for, is for this park, and it's 100% eligible. And just for the second point, for those playing along at home, this would do a 5-lane road with sidewalks, everything from the interstate, Eagle, all the way down Eagle Road to the park at the time roughly of opening through what projects ACHD is planning on doing and this cooperative.
Right.
So,
Mr. Mayor?
Council Administrator was in first.
sorry, thanks. Just help me understand why we would build the collector road. I guess I've been there. It's a beautiful park. Looks like a nice plan. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of specific things, amenities. It looks like it's well thought out, but there is a road already that goes through the park, and I think it could connect those parking lots at the different like zones. So why would we need to build the collector?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Strader, that's a great question. Lake Hazel Road is, well, first of all, we need 2 entrances into the park. The other thing is that Lake Hazel Road is a mobility corridor, so they're limiting access and restricting access. Per their staff report from phase 1, the existing entrance goes to a right in and right out, and that the bulk of the traffic is funneled down the collector road to a signalized intersection. So that's ACHD's requirement. We're definitely not, we're not a huge fan of building roads. It's not what we do. We can, but you know, we do parks, and the more using some of those funds. Some of the collector road, we've already put in a trust at ACHD for the construction cost of the road. So it's been thought out for a while that that's the ultimate traffic flow.
Mr. Sidaway, I see you want to also weigh in.
In very simple terms, part of the reason is that it's a requirement of ACHD. The collector roads are on adopted plans at both the ACHD and the city in the planning department. And collector roads are not built by ACHD the way arterials are. They're built by development generally. So we're not responsible for the entire collector road all the way across. I believe it's a half section plus 12 feet. But we do have to follow the development rules and build the collector as a developer adjacent to a required collector.
Got it. And would there be a cost sharing with the adjacent development if it develops that's across, I mean, the other side of the collector then, or how would that work?
They have to finish the other, what's remaining of their half of the collector and the curb gutter sidewalk on that side, because we wouldn't be doing that. We have to build our half plus 12 feet so that there's 2 lanes.
Thanks.
Mayor, Councilwoman Strader, in addition to that, there wouldn't be any cost to the city for right-of-way.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Cavanagh.
Mike, thanks for the presentation. I do have some questions, so I hope there's a lot that's being proposed that I really like. There's some things that I do have some questions about. When this park was first proposed, and maybe my memory is fuzzy, is there was an emphasis on water, fishing, again, some of the stuff that has made Kleiner Park kind of unique. I noticed that's not being proposed any longer, and either I missed the memo or there's been a shift, and I'm just curious if you could at least catch me up to date as to what caused that shift. I'm sure it was for a good reason. I'm probably a little behind.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Cavanagh, great question. It was value engineered out of the plans.
Okay. Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Mike, can you go back to maybe the amenities map? Perfect. So when I first looked at, I appreciate you and the department getting the PowerPoint out early so we get a chance to review it. I know that sometimes takes some of the wow factor away, but I really like it. It helps me to be more prepared. There were some things that I took away from it that at least I want to, because you're asking for feedback. I want to make sure that you're hearing it. I like the addition of the basketball courts over by the pump track. I think that's great. I think we probably need more of those, maybe one more set, just my opinion. I touched on the pump track, I think is too small. I think that's, to me, if we're value engineering away from water, and we're wanting to be focused on things that tweens and teens like, which I really applaud you for doing. I know we've talked about this a lot. We need more of it. I mean, I feel like that we're giving kids out in this area kind of the free sample, and I think that we should give them the full meal deal. It will not come to any surprise to you. I'm concerned about the cost that's going to be associated with more ball fields. We have lots of ball fields in Meridian. We do not have pump tracks. We do not have skate facilities. We have a skate facility. To me, when I start hearing about lighting and rolling fences, unless there is a plan for the full fee recovery to be covering those costs, those are not things that I'll be supportive of. I want to be direct with you. I know that's not coming as a surprise. We spent a lot of money on ball fields that for the most part are only utilized by leagues. And I want us focused on more amenities that a mother and a daughter or a father and a daughter can go utilize right then and there. And responding to the needs of our tweens and teens. So if you're looking for feedback, I would say scrap the multi-use diamonds and invest the dollars that we were going to spend on lighting and rolling fences to expand the skate aspects and the pump track. I think the addition of the pickleball is great too, though. And I recognize that, we've talked a lot about this, and if it's beneficial to meet with you in the department separately, so I'm not monopolizing the time, I'm happy to do that. In the past, I thought there'd be opportunities for feedback and that I would learn after the fact had passed. So I don't want to lose that opportunity to be on the record about some things that I think that we need to be looking at.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Mike, how many ball fields do we have under lights right now? I know we've got Story is under lights. How many other ball fields do we have under lights?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Hoagland, we have the two at Story. One is a baseball field. And right now that's being used by Cole Valley Christian School as their high school baseball field. We have Story and two at Discovery. And that's it.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I don't have a problem with that. We were turning away teams and for extend the use of the ball fields by installing lights, which can be used for all sorts of activities. And I like that multi-use concept. In fact, one of my questions I have, going past Settlers Park on a busy Saturday, and there's tournaments going on, there's kids using the park, pickleball and tennis and fishing. It's the parking, as we know, we've had to expand parking, and there's still not enough. Is this going to be enough parking for this regional park? This is a huge facility. What are our numbers when it comes to parking?
Mayor, Councilman Hoagland, great question. So in this design, there's including what's already been built in phase 1, there's close to 700 spots. And it's always a balance, and a lot of times it comes, we want where there's an event or the park is being used by a particular group, we want open parking for the public. They need to be able to come in and use the facility as well as like anybody else can. It's a tough balance because it's like, the Easter Sunday at a church. There's a handful of days when it's just not enough and it's kind of a madhouse, which is good because that means it's really popular. But then you go through and there could be periods of time where there's nobody there and you think, what a waste. Why so much parking? So we think that, we go through and we say, okay, there's this many users at this and this many users at that. And we kind of do the tally and run through some of the math in our design process. And we think we get pretty close.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, follow up?
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that we have two entrances for this facility, because when you have those high use periods of time, they're exiting from a tournament and other people are coming in. It allows traffic, because traffic will back up. Lake Hazel will be a busy road, and even with the lights, and that allows 2 lanes instead of having just one long snake all the way back into the parking lot at times. So I think that's good. The pump track, when I first read up on this, I had to Google that. Pump track, what is that? And that looks like fun. Now, as to the size, as Councilman Cavanagh, I don't know if it should be bigger, what that entails, and that's a possibility. I like the fact that bikes and little scooters can use it as well. A lot of younger kids ride those scooters and they're very popular. I like the fact that the skateboard with the rails and all those different things that they have. In fact, one comment I would have that's beyond this park is the fact that when we walk in Rita Husky Park, which is just down the street, down the pathway from our house, kids are out there on the concrete just riding their skateboards. And of course, they're using the benches for their jumps. And I thought it'd be nice just to have a concrete pad with a few of those rails and whatever things they have, not a full-blown skate park, but just a few items that they can do tricks on. And I think as we look at future parks, we need to kind of think about that, because it's just a very popular thing and kids like it. Those pickleball courts are full. both at Settlers and Rita Husky. In fact, as I thought about that, Councilman Strader talked about, where are their parks going to be and whatnot. This is a big regional park like Julius Kleiner, Settlers, Heroes to some degree. It's a little different facility. But when I drive on a Saturday and I go past Settlers Park and it's packed, and then I go to my subdivision and I look at our open space with the sand volleyball court that they provide, and it's full and there's people everywhere. And my wife and I go for a walk and we go to Rita Husky Park and it's full. And I know Keithburg Park and Heroes Park is just another 1.5 miles away. And I would probably find the same things. This regional park is going to be well used, well loved. And we're still going to need some little neighborhood parks out there for those other activities and just that space where people go in the evening. This one you have to get in your car and drive to. And of course, we've got pathways that are going to connect, which is definitely needed. But I still think we're going to have an, as we did in other parts of the city, places that we can partner with developers and create these other neighborhood parks, not a regional park, but neighborhood parks to fulfill the need. Once this area is built out, there's going to be a lot of people there, and parks are one of the things that make Meridian a great community. We have these nice open spaces and open areas for people to use. So just my thoughts on this as we're looking ahead and as we develop this park. I think you guys have worked very hard on this. Yeah, might use some tweaking here and there, but I'm excited about the future when this thing gets developed.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, I like where you're going with it. I have a little bit of a concern around just the near term. I would suggest holding off on expending a lot of money until we get to find out what happens with the, Bill 1108. If we're pausing decisions on development, especially in the fringes of the city, I would expect we to do the same thing with our parks plans. So that's just one comment. Hopefully that'll get resolved beneficially for all of us. The one comment I agree with, I think the skate park aspect, just having a couple of things there is really not enough. I think, I take my kids all the time to the little skate park in Star. I like how that was done. It's really small, but it's still, set up in a nice way. I think we could do more there. Feels like we're just kind of giving them a tiny nod of something they could use and maybe think about that. Not sure about the ball fields and moving nets, and I don't know, maybe want to understand a little more about the ball fields, but I'm not against it. I think this is great if we can do it. I would just suggest that we hold off on committing any funding for this phase until we find out about 1108 would be my 2 cents.
Just to touch on that, I mean, this will be through the budget process. So the information will be had. It does have a much lower cost because it is, how many employees, Mike? Is it 1 or 2?
Mr. Mayor, so we have a little bit of startup costs with some equipment for phase 2, but the reoccurring annual cost for maintenance is right now that's in the budget. The CFP is $202,000 per year. So that includes, asphalt maintenance, fertilizer, sprinklers, the whole electricity, everything. So yeah, but the rest of the money would utilize impact fees that we have in the bank today.
And if we don't use, we need to give back.
That's correct.
So it does have a double impact. It's to a certain extent, the longer we hold off, but it will be part of the budget process, and we will know 1108 in the context of all of our other needs, because if there are other needs, you hate to get to the point where parks versus public safety becomes the conversation, but you never know when you got to look at the long-term cost from the budget standpoint. Mike, just my feedback, you already kind of, I would agree. I mean, I don't think we need road skate park, but I haven't seen the one in Star, but at least a Tully element to me would be makes sense. I think that there's space down below the teen you could do an actual dirt track. And I don't know what a dirt track costs and or maintains, but it seems like a low cost amenity. And when people have reached out to the mayor's office over the last couple of years, they've asked for a BMX track. And I don't think they've been asking for pump tracks. And I've been kind of more the impression that we were talking a BMX track than a pump track. But again, is that a partnership opportunity? Because I don't know what the BMX world looks like in Ada County. I know what it used to be. I know what it was in Pocatello, but I can't say what it is here. So just food for thought from my perspective. The lighted fields and what that looks like. I have no issues with that. I think at the end of the day, if you're going to put multi-use on it to the best of your ability, don't have part of it over the dirt. To me, it's get it all on grass. If you can't get it all on the grass, don't put it there, because no one wants to be that person playing, and all of a sudden you go from grass to dirt when you're playing in football or soccer. So that, I know this is conceptual, but just to me, practical input. The last thing I would suggest, and I understand the popularity of pickleball, and I don't know if we've done this or looked at it, but I was trying to think, do we have a tennis court in South Meridian in our system? I think the answer is no, to my knowledge. I know that they're only at Settlers. Again, kind of the same back thing to like where our lights are. I'm not going to say that this is where you need tennis courts, but I think it's just making sure that when we look at our amenities package around the city, that we are spreading them out so that it makes sense. That's to me more important. I mean, whether we can go add them in another park in the future or someplace else, but just so we're consistently spreading out the amenities. And that to me is why the skate park makes sense here. Kind of got one up in that northern central, this a little bit further south, but just instead of one, multiple. That's my thoughts.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Burnt.
There's been a lot of feedback, good feedback this evening, and I really appreciate it. The only thing that I'm going to highlight is the skate park. And I've been hit up a lot by kiddos. In fact, there's been 2 that I can think of on the top of my head that have actually advised them to write personal letters to Director Sidaway just to let them get engaged in the city process and how that works. I thought that would be cool to have them write a letter to like the director and have them, ask for a skate park in South Meridian. I think that would be huge. Honestly, I think that would be really big. Again, doesn't need to be road style, but if you do, that'd be great. Have the summer X games in Meridian.
It's the footprint of the one in Star is
pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, there's enough features in there to be attractive and to keep someone's attention for a long period of time. And it's a great place to hang out, and it's cool.
I couldn't agree more. And I know there's a lot of engagement from the community. I know there's a lot of donations, for the Tully Park skate park. So maybe that's something that we can spearhead as well. Again, I would have no problem helping out with that as well. But I think that there's something to be said for a skate park, a big, nice skate park in South Meridian. The tennis courts that the mayor spoke about, very intriguing as well. So you got a lot of feedback. I'm going to leave it at that. Appreciate your presentation.
Mr. Mayor?
Council, anything else before I turn this over to Mr. Sidaway? Any other questions or comments? Mr. Sidaway, go ahead.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for all of the feedback. This has been very helpful, and I'm so excited to see this conversation moving forward. I do anticipate coming back with additional details as we get further into the design. On the theme, one of the recurring themes has been the pump track. So I'll just offer to send out to the group maybe some video links that can show you some of the inspiration going into the idea. There's one in Leavenworth, Washington that is, I think, about 10,000 square feet, similar to the size that what we're showing, and you'd be surprised at how much can happen on it. Not saying we don't want to expand it. We very well might want to as we dig into it, but I'll send those out just as information. And I would say that pump tracks are very popular with the BMX crowd. They are something that BMXers love. So BMXers would want to be involved in the design process for something like a pump track. And there's been some excitement with some of those groups as we've been talking to them about the possibility of a pump track. I'll leave it there for now.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Mike.
Thanks.
Good to see you too, Garrett.
Go coach those girls. Next item on the agenda is number 13, which is our public presentation for the Community Development Block Grant Program. Substantial amendment to program year 2019 action plan. I will turn this over to Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm going to share my screen really quick. So, as you said, I'm here today with the presentation, the first public presentation for our amendment to this action plan, and it's related to additional CARES Act funding that we're receiving. So the purpose of this, as I said, is to include our additional CARES Act CDBG funding. And throughout this, you may see it referred to as CDBG CV instead of like CDBG PY19 or something like that. That's just the way that they're referring to this funding. So for this, I need to come to you because it's a substantial amendment, because it's a change to more than 20% of our annual funding. And it's also providing funding for an activity that was not previously included in our action plan. In the first allocation, we received $288,000, and that was approved by all of you on April 28th, 2020. And with those funds, we put it all towards public services. The second allocation is for an additional $254,000, and it's going to bring our total award to $542,303. There's longer expenditure requirements around it than there is in our regular year funding. So we'll have to expend 80% of it by June 4th, 2023, and it needs to be 100% spent by June 4th, 2026. So with that, you're probably wondering what the progress of the funds we currently have is. So I looked at when we first got the funds, which was June 4th, 2020 through January 31st, 2021. And in that time, our current expenditures were $27,274. And just keep in mind, it took a little bit for some of the programs to get up and running. So it was a little bit slower than we had anticipated, but it is roughly 9% of the first allocation that was spent during that time. The projects that we funded right now was Jesse Tree Rental Assistance, NeighborWorks Boise was Mortgage Assistance, and case management through Terry Riley's Allenbaugh House. So again, we didn't spend as much during this first little bit. We worked really hard to try to figure out what the needs may be, but when the pandemic hit, none of us knew what it was going to look like. So as we've learned, there's a lot of funding that went to different resources, such as rental assistance and things like that. So I think that's part of why some of these have not been spent as quickly as we thought that they would. So for intended use, the first thing that we want to do, this additional activity, would be putting some of it towards admin so that we can really reach out and figure out what the gaps are in the community and see what the public is saying they actually need. And then we can work on the projects. The additional funding would, other than admin, would all go toward projects, public service projects that would meet those needs from what the community has told us is missing in the funding that's available right now. And any project that we do would have to be related to preparing, preventing, and responding to COVID-19. So the changes to the action plan, they came under the citizen participation piece, changes in funding, and goals and projects. Under citizen participation, if you're looking at the action plan, I wanted to make sure you could identify exactly where it was because it's kind of a big document. I don't want you to have to dig through it. So on page 3, we updated the narrative to include the details of the citizen participation process. And the citizen participation comments attachment then will be including all of the public comments that we receive. And there's also evidence of public notification that was included. And in the attachment of grantee unique appendices, the updated resolution will be included once it's signed. For the changes to funding, page 23, the introduction added the second allocation of CARES Act funds. On page 24, we updated the charts with the additional resources. And attachment SF424s and certifications, that's the application. So once those are signed, they'll be included. The final piece for goals and projects, pages 26 and 27, we updated the chart to add funding to the goals of admin and public services. Page 33, we included the CDBG CV funds for administration, and pages 34 through 35 was increasing the amount of funds to the public services related to COVID-19. So as far as our next steps, right now we're in the middle of it. The public comment period opened February 26th and it will end next week. Today is the first presentation during your workshop. Next week, we'll have a second presentation, which will be a brief overview, and then we'll go more into the public comments that I've received. And we'll finish that up with a public hearing during the council meeting, and then you guys will close it for me. And on April 6th, then I will submit the finalized plan and a resolution for you to adopt. And then by the end of that week, I'll be able to submit it to HUD. So right now, the comments on the plan are being accepted until March 23rd. So anybody who has anything that they want to discuss about it should contact me. My email address is ccampbell@meridiancity.org, and my phone number is 208-489-0575. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Pearl.
Thank you, Crystal. Do I remember correctly that we did a plan amendment when we got the first allocation of CARES funds? And has there been any change to what those funds can be used for from that last amendment? Like, has there been any change made by the federal or the state government in terms of what those funds can be spent on in relationship to the grant money? Or is it the same, essentially going to be the same process as prior?
It is the same. And we technically could use it for other things like our normal grant, like public facilities, but it has to be tied to COVID-19 somehow. So a lot of jurisdictions throughout the country just didn't think it was wise to put COVID-19 funds into those type of projects. So that's why we focused on public services. But if there is something specific that you are thinking we're missing, then I would love to get that feedback from you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Pearl.
Nothing specific. It just, I guess I'm trying to, I was on, the committees that were reviewing that, and I just trying to get a feel for, it seems to me like we had a challenging time even getting the applicants to use the funds that were allocated to them, and that there might be a surplus. So now that we have some additional funding, are we going to be able to provide more? Do you think we're going to have the applicants to really use the funds? And was it just that there was a slow start to get those funds dispersed, or are we going to have a surplus?
I think that is a valid question. It's something that I'm honestly a little bit concerned about too. Like I said, we're going to do a lot more outreach. We were just trying to hit the ground running so much before that we didn't have the ability to do that in the past. But now we're going to be able to really spend some time and focus on it. And we've got this extended period of time to use it. So I think that we're also smart in not spending all of it up front, because as we can see, then this is having lasting impressions on our community. So not being able to spend it all in the first year, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely something that I'll need to keep track of.
Mr. Mayor, one more question, if I may.
Councilwoman Pearl.
That being said, are the funds, I think we set aside a small amount for like administration of the grant. Are we permitted to use those funds for additional administration of the grant, meaning, the outreach effort? Is that going to be something that you will do I don't know what the process would be, but is that something that a consideration that's being made in either a budget amendment for 21 or something that's going to be adjusted for 22?
So for this grant, for the PY19 and PY20 funds, we did put aside a small amount of admin. But for this grant, we didn't put any of it towards admin. We wanted to do all of it towards public services because, again, we thought that it would fly out the door for like mortgage assistance, especially. But so, yeah, it hasn't. And that's exactly what we are using these admin funds for. I'll likely work with a consultant who can help me really specialize in identifying stakeholders that can help us see the bigger picture. So yeah, that's exactly what we'll be doing with this.
Council, any additional questions? Okay. So will this be coming back?
Yes, next week, then you'll get to see me again.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Crystal. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is item 14, discussion of potential resolution to amend the City of Meridian Standard Operating Policy and Procedure Manual. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Neri.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think I'm starting this, but I think Crystal and Todd can probably provide more in-depth information from the compensation committee, but I did draft the resolution that's item 14. So what this does, there's two changes in our policy manual. One would be this vacation rollover program, to institute it. This would mirror the program that we've contractually added to the CLA with the fire union. So it's not very similar, it is similar. And it would then extend this opportunity to all employees of the city in using a portion of their vacation. I think it tries to provide a nice balance of making sure employees still maintain some vacation on the books so that they have opportunities to use that, to maintain that work-life balance. But for those that have accrued a significant amount, there's some value that they can use that towards putting towards the two retirement accounts that we provide opportunity for our employees to invest in. So I think they've really created a very nice program that is beneficial now. It could be beneficial to everyone. The other change is the current director benefit has a specified number, and what we want to do is just roll that back into this one program, same for everybody. So the directors would have the same opportunity, but not have the larger cap or anything. The directors already get a slightly more vacation benefit, but the rollover would be exactly the same as everybody else. So I don't have anything more than what's provided in your packet. We did put the reso on there if the council's comfortable. I think our last discussion with Crystal and Todd on the subject, the council just wanted to see the written document and see kind of what it looked like once we put it down. I put the reso on there. If you're comfortable with it, we can approve it tonight. If you'd like another week to ponder that or consider some word changes, we certainly can do that. We'd like to do it this month because we'd like to get the program moving forward in April and May so that it can kind of get rolled into the payments being made in the month of May. I left anything else, Crystal or Todd could probably add that.
We'll see if Crystal or Todd has anything to add.
I don't have anything else to add, Mayor, members of council. Bill, thank you for doing a good job with that overview.
Mr. Lavoy, did you want to speak specifically to the timing issue?
Mr. Mayor, again, we are comfortable with the proposal that Bill has recommended. We'd like to see the timing of this get completed for the month of March so we can make our payroll policy for the month of May and June. So appreciate Bill for the words. No additional information.
Council, any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Burr.
Just a question to the council, if they would like this to be discussed in another week, or if there are any questions or any concerns about not reading in this resolution this evening.
Councilman Kavanagh.
Suggestion. I think we all probably had a chance to review it, but As this is somewhat of a substantial change, perhaps we could add it to next week's consent agenda. Gives council one additional week to review. If anyone has a particular topic they want to discuss, we can ask to have it pulled off. If not, just add it on to next week's consent.
Mr. Mayor, I'm fine. I'm fine with that approach.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
I am as well, and just to comment on this process, this is a good example of, as we see the divergence of council's review of procedure versus policy, and ensuring that while we'll always be involved in policy changes, procedure changes as well, when there's fiscal impact, those also will be part of what goes before council. I know that's been discussed by other council members before, so I think an extra week's fine. I don't have any concerns with what's proposed myself, but an extra week's necessary by all means.
Mr. Mayor, just one last point. I did want to point out, I did also forward it to the fire union. Our contract does require us to have them at least review it. And if they have any concerns or objections, then they do not.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Burke.
It's put on the consent agenda for next week.
Okay. There you go. So do we need to move item 15 off the agenda? Do we need to take action?
Mr. Mayor, no actions needed. We will just move it forward to next week's consent agenda.
Okay. Then with that, we will move to item 16. Oh, thank you, Crystal, Todd. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, guys.
Next item is the first reading of ordinance number 21-1916. I'll ask the clerk to read this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an ordinance adding a new section to Meridian City Code, section 7-2-2B8, regarding prohibited parking in front of mailboxes, adopting a savings clause and providing an effective date.
Council, you've heard this item read by title. Would you like it read in its entirety? Council, do I have any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor?
Maybe I could kick it off for a moment first.
Mr. Neri.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So we've had a number of discussions with code enforcement and Council President Burnt about the ordinance and the structure and the need for it. So in talking with Lacey, the supervisor, basically they get, again, they don't have a lot of data because the code doesn't exist yet. They do get calls periodically from people that have people generally parked in front of the mailbox. There is no standard in the federal regulations on distance from the mailbox. They suggest in training to have some clearance somewhere between 12 to 15 feet, but they don't, that's their training. It's not a rule. Their only rule is that they are not required to get out of the vehicle to deliver the mail to your mailbox if there's a car blocking their way. And that is completely subject to the interpretation of the mail carrier. And they will get out of the mailbox if a car is blocking your mailbox to put a note in it to tell you that the car is blocking the mailbox, so they're not going to deliver your mail. So it's an ironic situation. But anyway, what Lacey said is if they get calls for the value of this is that the footage distance gives them some objective means to address the problem. The likelihood of someone calling because someone is 8 feet from their mailbox or 6 feet from their mailbox is fairly remote. Likely they would get a warning in those circumstances unless it's a chronic issue. If a car is directly parked in front of the mailbox, they will likely cite them because clearly most people should know that, not to do that. So that's their objective on how they would enforce it and how they felt it would be interpreted. I did send it to planning and the planning was comfortable with it. This will not change how they address parking in neighborhoods or how much feet of parking there. They use the linear square foot of the sidewalk and they use that regardless. They don't count mailboxes and parking and things like that. They simply count linear feet. So they had no issues with it. They weren't concerned that it would impact the planning areas. I think Lacey previously had stated that in checking with the postmaster, those joint boxes that we discussed previously, they load from the rear. So they actually park and get out of the vehicle anyway. So they will exit the vehicle to load those boxes. So they're not concerned about anything in that regard. Even if they were parked in front of it, they wouldn't, the US mail would still get delivered in those circumstances. So they weren't concerned about that. Ironically, just fun fact, with on Sundays, we left Sundays out this time because they do deliver mail on Sundays. It is predominantly their Amazon package delivery day for the post office, and they will get out and deliver it. They actually are contractually obligated to deliver it, whether there's a car parked in front of the mailbox or not. So U.S. mail, they don't have to. Amazon mail, they do. So we took Sunday out since that is done, but federal holidays, they generally don't do much except at Christmas time. That's the only federal holiday where they tend to deliver them regardless. But we left it in because generally they don't do it on those days.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. And just for the record, when I was driving to work this morning, I saw a car walking a multi-mailbox on the sidewalk, going the opposite direction of all things. But I did not call code or police, even though it was someone was sitting in the car. But I know. Council, further, any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Perot.
so perhaps Mr. Neri can clarify this for me. In regard to how this is written on the agenda, the first reading of the ordinance, does this mean that for the next couple of weeks, we will have a second reading and a third reading, and we're not permitted to suspend the rules in this situation? Is that why this is drafted or written differently than the ordinance under number 17 as far as the readings go?
So great question. Councilmember Perot, members of the council. So we put this on as a first reading because, again, we had a subsequent discussion about it. We didn't know if the council's desire would be to have a public hearing on this. And so therefore we would only introduce it at this. We would then schedule it for a second, and it can be a second and third reading combined as well, if you wish. The only real question I had for tonight was if you want the second reading next week, or you want the second reading would be the first Tuesday in April, because there's no meeting on the 30th. So that would give us a little bit of time to make that known to the public, a week, or it would end up being 3 weeks. So that was our only real direction or question. And I noticed that Lacey's in the room too, so I didn't know if you had a question for her, if I missed something or I overstated something, she should certainly correct it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Perot.
I don't want to lengthen the process, but I'm not opposed to the idea of having a public hearing about this. There may be concerns or issues that we're just not aware of regarding 10 feet on either side of a mailbox that we should be aware of. Curious what my fellow council members think about that.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Kavanaugh.
I'm supportive of any time we're creating a new ordinance that requires law enforcement or code enforcement to get involved, that we have a public hearing. So I think the question for me would be more about time. I don't know. I think we've got a fairly lengthy meeting next week. So my thoughts would be we schedule it for that meeting in April with a public hearing. I'm not opposed to scheduling for next week either.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Borton, I think that you had asked.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I guess to Councilman Perot's question, I was comfortable moving forward tonight. That might not be the case now, but it's been vetted and discussed and reviewed, and don't park in front of the mailbox.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, I was ready to vote on it tonight as well. I appreciate Councilman Kavanaugh's, willingness to get public input, but I just don't see people coming in to say they want to park in front of mailboxes. And I just don't see it. So, this is a common sense thing to do. And I think it's well drafted. We've heard it, we've discussed it. So I'm ready to go right now. But if we want to wait a week, that's fine, and take any comment, but I'm ready to go.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
I think we vote on it. I'm good.
Mr. Neri, can
That's
we
just
vote on
me.
it tonight? Yeah, we can't vote on it tonight. So
Since we've only noticed it as a first reading, we should put it on for a second and third reading next week. And
Yeah.
certainly make note.
The-
of what comment would be.
That will be my recommendation, and speaking with the council president is the second and third next week. Again, I could be wrong, but I do not think that we will have one person on this item.
Mr. Mayor, clarification, if I may.
Councilman Pro.
My memory's a little fuzzy. Did we decide that 10 feet on either side of the mailbox was appropriate? I personally think that's too much space. We discussed that the last time we talked about it. I was more comfortable with maybe 5 feet, 7 feet. I mean, there are some neighborhoods again where 10 feet hits the next mailbox and the next mailbox. I mean, there's somewhere there. And so I don't know, maybe I'm way off base, but to me, 20 feet of space on, for the truck to come in is a significant amount of space. And so I don't know. I don't want to continue to have the conversation that we had last time, but just putting that out there.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember.
let's take care of this week. If you invite everyone to come testify next week, if you think you have issues about this, I think we've hashed it all out. Let's take care of the discussion next week, during the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just so you know, the 10-foot, I mean, it was a discussion Lacey and I had on what would be the most appropriate. Make a long story short, the average US car is about 15 feet long. So you think if your car parked literally right in the center of the mailbox, then it's 7.5 feet on each side is where the car's going to stick out. So if you made it 8 feet, that's fine. 8, 10, I don't think it really makes a big difference in reality, but it wasn't just 10 feet because we just picked a number out of the air. We really were trying to figure out if a car literally did park in front of it, and most cars are 15 feet long, that's how much they'd stick out on either side of it.
Well, and kind of going back to it, if you do 7 feet, there's not enough space for a postal service truck to go into it anyways, which is defeating the purpose. I mean, if that's what you're really trying to allow is for them to drive in. But
Mr. Mayor,
I have a question.
Councilwoman Perot.
So as far as enforcement goes, if 2 foot of that car is parked in that 10 feet space, is that a violation? I mean, anywhere within that 10 feet? Is it like any part of a vehicle is in the 10 feet? Is that where we're drawing the line?
Mr. Mayor, I could help answer that question. So, and Lacey's here as well. Councilmember Perot, when we had the conversation, I mean, most people aren't going to call because a car is 2 feet from their mailbox. They may, but it's unlikely that they're going to call very often for that. In Lacey's perspective, for her code enforcement officers, unless it's a chronic problem, that it's the same issues between neighbors, they're likely to give warnings to people that are parked not in front of the mailbox, but away from it, 3 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet, whatever. So, because again, most people wouldn't know that. Most people probably wouldn't call them. So it likely wouldn't come up very often, if ever. If it's clearly parked in front of the mailbox, again, the average human being should know not to do that. And they'd be more inclined to probably cite those folks, maybe give them a warning, and depending on the circumstance, that'll be their discretion. But they're more inclined if they are literally parked in front of it, because most people should know not to do that. Now, again, there's always going to be situations that are unique, or the circumstances or the mail carrier just pulled away and somebody pulled up there. Again, I think common sense will work for most of these situations. I don't foresee a great deal of calls on this, but it gives them the ability to at least address it when they do have it. So that was my take. I don't know if Lacey has a different perspective.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember.
Above and beyond what common sense is, I think that you really have to take a look at the culture of our code enforcement team and the police department and what they stand for and what they do. I mean, no one's perfect, but it's rare that we get, complaints about what they do and the job that they offer to our community. I mean, our first rule of engagement is always to educate. That's always been what we do. That's what we will continue to do. If there's someone out there, and unfortunately, that's the reason why we have laws and regulations, right? And code, because there are folks out there who sometimes break the rules. Thankfully, in the city of Meridian, we have great folks and great residents, and and they do the best job that they can, and they respect the law and our code. But we're going to educate. We're going to talk to them, and we're going to help them understand why it is that what in the reason behind what we do, and we're going to educate. That's what we've always done, and that's what we're going to continue to do. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, I'll pay you a quarter for that. Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, just, I recall from the last time that the mail trucks were like 14 feet. I think we hashed it out. I thought the only piece left was just to check with planning. And I think I heard Mr. Neri say that we have checked with the planning department and that they don't have any issues from their perspective in terms of certain housing types having major parking issues from this. Is that right?
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. I'm not concerned about the distance at this point based on that.
I think the thing is, no road parking is put into the calculations for what is required in any development. So the road parking is just an added benefit. Okay. Well, we will have, I assume this will come back next week for second and third reading in that context. And okay.
Good.
All right, thank you. Next item up is ordinance number 21-1920. Ask the clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an ordinance related to H 2020-0064, Pura Vida Ridge Ranch, for annexation of a parcel of land being a portion of Government Law 3 of Section 4, Township 2 North, Range 1 East, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, and being more particularly described in Attachment A, and annexing certain lands and territory situated in Ada County, Idaho, and adjacent contiguous to the corporate limits of the city of Meridian, as requested by the city of Meridian, establishing and determining the land use zoning classification of 26.34 acres of land from RUT to R4 medium low density residential, 6.64 acres, and R15 medium high density residential, 16.69 acres zoning districts in the Meridian City Code. Providing the copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing for a summary of the ordinance and providing for a waiver of the reading rules and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Council. You've heard this ordinance read by title, and it will be made like it's read in its entirety. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pearl.
I move that we approve ordinance number 21-1920 with a suspension of rules.
Second motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve under suspension of the rules. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion is agreed to, and the ordinance is passed. Next item up is item 18, ordinance number 21-1921. Ask the clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an ordinance related to H 2020-0119, Mark Enos annexation for annexation of a parcel of land being all of Lot 5, Block 1 of Carroll Subdivision, Book 38 of Plats at pages 3164 through 3165. Records of Ada County, Idaho, in the northerly 25 feet of East Leslie Drive, adjacent to said Lot 5, Block 1, situated in the northeast 1/4 of Section 5, Township 3 North, Range 1 East, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, and adjacent contiguous to the corporate limits of the city of Meridian as requested by the city of Meridian, establishing and determining the land use zoning classifications of 1.005 acres of land from R1 to R2, low density residential zoning district in the Meridian City Code. Providing that copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, and providing for a summary of the ordinance and providing for a waiver of the reading rules and providing an effective date.
Council, you've heard this ordinance read by title. We may like it read in its entirety. If not, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pearl.
I move that we approve ordinance number 21-1921 with a suspension of rules.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance under suspension of rules. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to and the ordinance is passed. Next item is item 19, executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Burnt.
I move that we go into executive session per Idaho Code 74-2061F, 74-2061C and D.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton?
Aye.
Cavanagh?
Aye.
Perot?
Aye.
Strader?
Aye.
Hoagland?
Aye.
Byrne? Aye.
All ayes, motion carries, and we will go into executive session. Thank you.